So let's get started. My name is Michelle Barker. I'm the Director of the Research Software Alliance, and I'm chairing this session here today on growing research software initiatives and communities in the Asia Pacific. We have 4 speakers. I'll give an introduction to the work of the Research Software Alliance. Then we'll go in the order that's on the agenda. Batul will talk about some initiatives in the Kingdom, Saranji about RSE, the Research Software Engineering Organization, and Kazi will talk about research software engineering in Bangladesh. Let me just share my screen to get us started. So if you have questions or comments, we're such a small group, you could probably just unmute and ask, or you can type things into the chat, or if you're in Wova, which I'm not, assume there's a way you can ask questions or make comments in there as well. Okay. Right. Hopefully you can see my screen there. Nope, sorry, I just hit the wrong button. Right, I'm going to be talking about the Research Software Alliance, which is an international organization which assists in facilitating collaborations and advancement of the research software ecosystem. To start with a little bit of background about why research software is so important, and hopefully I'm speaking to the converted here. These are some of the quotes that we often have on our website, that without data, it's difficult to validate results. But without code, we waste the opportunity to advance science, from Neil Chuhong. Similarly, from Titus Brown, data implies software. It's not much good gathering data if you don't have the ability to analyze it. And from Carol Goebel, software is the ubiquitous instrument of, I can't see the last word on my screen, but I think it's something like science or research. So these are great wordings that emphasize that whilst we've been doing so much fantastic work on open data in the research community as part of open science, software also plays a key role. There's been a number of studies done in the last 10 years to help really illustrate the importance of research. So there was some analysis done on how much funding goes to research software. So in the US, the National Science Foundation projects, 20% of their funding over 11 years typically mentioned software in their abstracts. In terms of publications, there's been some analysis of Nature papers to show that software-intensive projects are a majority of current publications, and the most cited papers are on methods and software. In terms of who's using and developing research software, a study done in the UK, and there was also a similar one done in the US some years ago, showed that 90% of the research community are using research software and 50% are involved in the development. So when we say involved in the development, that could vary from someone whose full-time role it is to create research software, to analyze the data in a research team, or it could be someone who just writes one script as part of their own research. And there's a wide breadth of degrees of involvement in developing research software. The Research Software Alliance has the vision that research software and those who develop and maintain it are recognized and valued as fundamental and vital to research worldwide. And our mission is to bring research software communities together to collaborate on this advancement. So we work internationally, so we're very keen to come and contribute to this conversation today about what's happening in the Asian community and to see how we could assist more collaboration in this area. Our history, we were founded in 2018. We have a number of Twitter followers. You can sign up to our newsletter. Our legal structure is that we're a fiscally sponsored project of Code for Science and Society. And this is a list of some of our supporters and partners. So we've received about $800,000 US in funding to date, and also in kind resourcing from some of our partners. Some of our recent achievements, we developed, sorry, was that a question or? No, all good. We've recently established the Research Software Funders Forum, which has 30 funding organizations from all over the world coming together monthly to network, compare best practice, learn from each other, but also to think about where there might be opportunities to work together, where a number of funders have a common interest such as providing a research software funding opportunity that's multilateral across a number of nations, or to focus on sharing best practice in something like how do we apply the FAIR principles for research software to the funders' policies. We have been involved in developing research software sharing guidelines in 2020 when COVID-19 first started, making recommendations for policymakers, funders and publishers and the research community as part of the Research Data Alliance initiative. We've been able to influence some of the conversations happening in UNESCO and OECD, who develop international policy on open sharing of data to make sure that research software was included in those recommendations. And I'll put a link to all of our slides into the chat later, or maybe one of my co-hosts can, so you can get copies of all of our talks and go through and look at all these links at your leisure. And we write a number of blogs. For example, the most recent one looked at the UNESCO and OECD recommendations and how national governments should be responding to them. Because they actually are soft, at least the OECD recommendation is soft law, which means the national governments who are part of the OECD should be implementing strategies to address them. We have some ongoing activities, for example, with the Research Data Alliance and Force 11, we've been co-leading the application of the FAIR guiding principles developed by Wilkinson et al. In 2016, which of course have been extensively implemented in relation to data. We've been working on how to apply them to research software and have a working group that's wrapping up soon that comes up with a definition of the FAIR principles for research software. We have a workshop coming up in a couple of months, which really looks at how we could reframe research software engineering, place diversity and equity inclusion at the heart, and that's occurring in the Netherlands in April with some online elements. If that's of interest to you, we still have just a few places left in our 55 participant maximum capacity, so please contact me. And another one of our ongoing activities, we have a research software landscape analysis which identifies all the different initiatives and communities that focus on research software, be it national interests or regional interests or international interests, disciplinary communities or organizations, or initiatives that focus on a particular area relevant to research software. So for example, there are organizations that focus on software sustainability or research software code citation, or training for research software skills. So we did a landscape analysis in 2020, and we're now updating that to provide more initiatives worldwide. And we'd really love to have your input to add to that list. So if you go to that URL, you can go and see the information we have so far. We have maybe 10 or 12 countries that we have covered. And thanks to some of the contributors to that who are listed here, including Batul and Saranjit, who are speaking today, and perhaps some of the others maybe in the audience I haven't had a chance to check. But we would really value others from other countries or from the existing countries that we've already covered to help fill in some gaps in our knowledge. So if you can add any lines on research software communities or initiatives that are relevant in your region or across the region, any of the funders that support the work in your region, and major events, we'd love to have some input. Just to talk a couple of the other projects that we've been running. We did a people roadmap in 2022, 2021, which aimed to look at what are a number of the organizations in the research software community internationally that really focus on people's careers or recognition or infrastructure to support people elements or policy elements. So we talked to all of these organizations to try and understand how many different organizations work in different areas. Who looks at policy that ensures the people who develop research software are recognized and have career paths? Who looks at what the incentives should actually be, with the research software engineering movement playing a major role there, and Saranjit will talk more about that. We looked at who provided opportunities for research software members to come together in communities, or provided skills and training opportunities, or provided the physical infrastructure, for example, to enable software citation. How does that actually happen? This is the link to the work we've been doing on FAIR principles for research software, if you wanted to look at that in more detail. And this is the draft that we came up of the principles. So in many ways, quite similar to the FAIR guiding principles developed in 2016, but we changed a few of the words from data to software. Also, they'd created some unique additional principles to apply this work to research software. I know I'm going through some of this quite quickly, but there's lots of links there if you'd like to learn more about it. And I think that's my final slide. So thank you very much for your time. And I'll now hand over to Batul as the next speaker.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for the wonderful presentation. I'm going to try to share my screen. Just give me a few seconds. I've also shared in the chat Michelle's slides, and I've also shared mine so you guys can access all the links that we have in the slides. So as Michelle just said, I'm going to speak about Saudi Arabia. I'm going to focus on it, but I'm going to speak more generally, I think, in open science practices and a bit about research software. So just before I start my talk, just want to introduce myself. I'm a computational biologist affiliated with KMARC and the University of Liverpool. KMARC is a research institution in Saudi Arabia. It's called the King Abdullah International Medical Research Center. I'm also a community lead in the open science community Saudi Arabia, which I'm going to speak about in a bit. I also organize and part of the team with Saranjit in the Ladies Global Committee, and I lead my own chapter about Ladies Dammam. Ladies, if you're not familiar with it, is a global organization that promotes gender diversity in our community. And I'm also a co-contributor to Turing Way. The Turing Way is a community-driven open source project that introduces open science practices to data science in very, very easy way and accessible way. So disclaimer, I'm not representing any of these communities or institutions when I speak in this talk. I'm just representing my own. So before I start talking about research software, I just want to speak about open science. So if you're not familiar with open science is an umbrella term. It's a movement that tries to increase the reproducibility, increase the transparency, the accessibility that we have in science. It introduces best practices in the way that we disseminate research. And when I say disseminate research, we disseminate publication, data, or research software, just Michelle explained, any kind of academic output. And the ultimate goal of open science is not just making science efficient and reliable, but also responsive to societal changes, as we've seen with the global pandemic. So this is really, really urgently needed in the Middle East and Arabic-speaking country in particular, where really the growth and the local infrastructure been affected for a very long time by some of the instability that does exist in part of the region, and also been exacerbated by the economic recession, by the global pandemic. And there's like around 25 countries that claim Arabic as an official or co-official language, and Saudi Arabia is one of these. Saudi Arabia not just the second largest within the Arab world, but also the second largest oil exporter, producer in the region, which gives the country really a significant power in the global stage. Saudi Arabia introduced something to reduce its dependency in the oil and to pursue a knowledge-based economy, introduced what we call it Saudi Arabia 2030 vision, which I'm going to speak about it a bit. So this vision really, as I said, is introducing, it's a package of economic and societal policy that try to pursue a knowledge-based economy rather than dependence on the oil export. And it focuses in its essence in installing value, enhancing knowledge, and improving equal access to education. And this is really aligned with the mission of open science, making science more accessible to the community. As I said, the vision makes it very, very clear that digital infrastructure is really important, any kind of innovation, any kind of research. So it did focus in introducing coding as an important STEM-based skill and support this kind of initiative that introduce or focus on best practices rather in coding and some of it in building research software. So as I said, this is aligned with open science. Open science in essence also referred to that transformation that we see in the globalization and introduce technology. There is many initiatives. I'm going to go them very, very quickly that really introduce best practices when it comes to research. Some of them is within CAUS Core Lab, which introduced carbon trees lessons, talking about what best practice, how you can build research software according to best practices. There is the Saudi Society for Bioinformatics and Computation Biology. There is a new working group, a community for the carbon trees in the MENA region, in which many from Saudi Arabia exist within this community. There is Arab R. Arab R is its mission to create a sustainable capacity building for Arab R users. And there's a few chapters, as I mentioned, for our ladies. One of them, Our Ladies Dammam. There is Our Ladies Jeddah, which has been just initiated a couple of weeks ago. And there is Open Science Community Saudi Arabia. I'm going to speak more about Open Science Community Saudi Arabia just because I lead that community, so I can give more details about it. Open Science Community Saudi Arabia really been initiated to provide that place in Saudi Arabia where newcomers, experienced peers can really not just interact, but also inspire each other to adopt these open science practices in their workflow and hopefully derive the creation of policies for infrastructure, for support services, because we lack any kind of infrastructure for open science within the Middle East. This community is part of the international network for open science community, where there is, I would say, 15 chapters within Europe, most of them within the Netherlands. There's one in Sweden, there's one in Ireland, and this is the only one within the Middle East or in Arabic-speaking countries. What we try not just to build community, but making sure really we have a healthy community where people really can interact with each other, can know how to contribute, can build in each other work. As I said, one of the things that we really focus on is introducing resources about open science, about best practices in Arabic, because there is hardly any resources written in Arabic. We take resources from we don't reinvent the wheel. We take resources from other communities and we try to translate these resources. We have a video about, for example, research, how to apply FAIR principle when it comes to research softwares. We try to connect local researchers who have really no visibility in the global community and increase their visibility. We also try to provide training, all of the free and best practices when it comes to research software and open science practices. One of the things that we worked on, as just Michelle introduced, the FAIR principles. This is one of the really problems that we have here, that we don't have yet an infrastructure for adopting the FAIR principles. So we're trying to explore any limitation of what already we have as the hidden or current digital infrastructure that adopt any kind of the bit inside the FAIR principles. We try to identify the need of the local community toward recommendation that can derive a new policy and foster a fair data culture. As I said, it doesn't have to be about data, it has to be, because you can apply FAIR not just in data, you can apply it in research software, you can apply it in training, you can apply it in all kinds of things. And this work is part of the Digital Infrastructure Incubator, which is funded by the Code for Science and Society, and you can find more about it on their website. I just want to conclude by saying that the research system in Arabic-speaking country is very new, which makes it hopefully it's easier to incorporate these principles as the system is building rather than shifting an established system as we see in the world. And this is taken from a really beautiful article by Sanderson. I think he was also given a talk within this conference about redesign open science for Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And hopefully Saudi Arabia can be potentially lead in building this open science infrastructure in MENA. Yeah, and with that, I conclude my talk. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Batul. That was fantastic, and certainly a really interesting comment that some of the research systems are quite new in that region, and it's an opportunity to do things differently from early on. I might just stop for a few minutes before we go to Saranjeet's talk and ask if there's any questions or comments at that stage. We'd be welcome to. I'd love to hear from the audience if there's similar things happening in your region, or if you have any more information you'd like to know about anything that we've said. So you can put your hand up, or you can put something into the chat, or given that we're quite a small group, you can just unmute and speak. If you're in the WOVA system, there's also a question asked in there about what are some of the challenges to do with research software in this region, so you can discuss in that, or if you're in the Zoom chat. Kazi, would you like to unmute?
Yeah. Well, it's me. It's basically forming a community, right? How about like recognizing them as a professional? Say, for example, if a people he or she wants to take this opportunity as his or her profession, is there any plan about this?
I think we should wait for Saranjeet's talk before we come back to answering that, because she'll certainly talk about how some parts of the community can be recognized. So we might just take that on notice. All right, well, let's go to Saranjeet's talk and see how much that answers your question, Kazi. And if not, we can go back and look at some of the other parts of the research software community and how we can enhance recognition of them. So Saranjeet, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Let me test my screen.
Yep, that's working.
Mm-hmm. Is it okay? Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Saranjeet Kaur Bhogal, and I'm presenting a talk on the Research Software Engineering Initiative in the Asia region. A bit about myself. I'm QuetiQuesting on Twitter and Saranjeet Kaur on GitHub. I'm a statistician based in India, and I am the project lead of the RSC Asia Association. I am also the founding committee member of NumFocus Project Incubator. This incubator is an initiative to help open source projects get NumFocus on their path to get NumFocus affiliated. Let me describe a bit about the research software engineering. There is a society called as the Society of Research Software Engineering, which was founded on the belief that a world which relies on software must recognize the people who develop it. So this society was founded in the UK about 10 years ago. And the mission of the society is to establish a research environment that recognizes the vital role of software in research. While I mention about the Society of RSC, I also would like to highlight that RSC roles are mostly concentrated in the global north so far, and there is a lack of movements in the global south. Hence, we realize that there should be a RSC Asia Association that helps the people in the Asian region to know about this community and this profession and propagate it in this region. I'll give a brief background on how we started the RSC Asia Association. I got to know about the RSC movement at the USA 2021 conference, which is where I thought about having or building such a association in the Asia region as well. At the time, I had shared this idea with Batul, and she encouraged me to participate in the Open Life Science program with this topic. So Open Life Science program is a program help to build open science ambassadors, people who have ideas or projects that they want to build in the open while also learning about open science principles. So we submitted this project at the Open Life Science Cohort 4 and got selected. It was a joint work with Jyoti Bhogal and was mentored by Anne Flux. On the first International RSC Day, which was held on 14th October 2021, we launched the RSC Asia Association. Recently, we graduated from the cohort 4 of Open Life Science program, where we successfully built the infrastructure for the RSC Asia Association. We have, in terms of infrastructure, we are now, we have a GitHub organization for RSC Asia. We have a website and we are actively present on Twitter with the handle @RSC_Asia. If you are interested in joining our community, you could just fill in the membership form and join our community. This would help us to recognize where are you joining from and what is your affiliation. I also represent RSC Asia Association as an observer at the meetings of the International Council of RSCs. At these meetings, mostly the discussions that occur are about how to progress RSCs at local levels, national levels. How can various RSCs interact among themselves? What are the upcoming initiatives, or where can we participate or learn more about the RSC movements? So this is one interesting meeting to attend. In terms of the ongoing work for the RSC Asia Association, I'm currently a mentee at the pilot mentoring program by the Society of RSC. In this program, I am being mentored by Michelle Barker, and we are working on strategies for community building aspect of the RSC Asia Association. We have a couple of ideas that we will be applying throughout this year. One of this is raising awareness in the Asian region about what is RSC, what is this movement about, what is this profession, and how you can be part of this community. We'll be conducting podcasts soon, where we'll be inviting experts from different regions and talking them about issues related to or questions about RSC. Another work that Jyoti is doing is she's currently selected in the cohort 4 of Open Life Science program under the mentorship of Malvika Sharan. And she's working on a project to build pathways for onboarding new people or experienced people to the RSC Asia Association. These people can join as contributors for a fixed period of time, contribute to the community, and then if they wish to continue, they can stay on the role or they can come back later. She is also working on adopting a code of conduct specific to the Asia region. So these are the ideas that we have for the upcoming year that we will be doing at the RSC Asia Association. Most of these activities would be awareness activities, as we see that there is a lack of awareness in this region, first of all. So we'll be trying to address those by conducting some podcasts around RSC Asia, and also some participatory activities down the line, where we will be participating in Hacktoberfest this year again. So this is all that is ongoing at RSC Asia. Thank you for attending my talk. I'm Saranjeet Kaur Bhogal. You can get to know more about my work on my website. The slides of this talk are shared on the chat and also on the GitHub repository. Thank you.
Thanks, Saranjeet. So maybe we could check in on whether that's answered Kazi's questions on one way in which some part of the research software community could be recognised, though there's certainly other people or other parts of the community, such as the community managers, who are also seeking for recognition, and if people have any questions. So again, feel free to unmute or put your hand up or write something into the chat if you'd like to follow up on any of that. I put a few more links into the chat on some of the definition of what a research software engineer is, to really re-emphasize that it can be a wide spectrum of people, from someone who calls themselves a researcher, but just happens to do a little bit of coding on the side with no formal training, through to someone who has a lot of formal training in coding, but loves research and wants to engage in coding for research. And there's some links in the Zoom chat as well on how to follow RSE Asia, to sign up to be a member, to stay up to date on what they're doing. And otherwise, you can go through the link to the slides for Saranjeet and find those links from her talk. All right, let's go to our last speaker then. Please welcome Kazi.
Let me go to my slide first. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm sure my presentation will be a bit different than yours, because here I'm basically here to learn about RSE, not to say, for example, share anything with you. So that's why my presentation is more about what is happening in Bangladesh. I mean, how we are doing our research here and how we can basically introduce the concept of RSE here. Do I need any music code there? Oh, sorry.
We can see your slides and hear you. You just might want to go into presentation. Yep, that's perfect.
Thank you. So before starting my presentation, I want to share one thing. So along, say for example, 10 or 12 years back, I was doing my PhD in RMIT. And during that time, we were in a research discussion with the Victorian Bioinformatics Society, they call it VBC. So the VBC people were there with my, me and my supervisor was there, and some prominent, eminent researchers from VBC, they came to us and they asked like, okay, can we do a collaboration? And my supervisor asked them like, what is the meaning of collaboration? And they said, okay, I mean, we are doing some bioinformatics stuffs, but we don't know how to code it or how to model it. Can you help us? And in that case, in a lighter way, I mean, in a joking mode, my supervisor says like, okay, we will do all the hard stuff, and you will get the you will get all the prizes and other stuff. I mean, for example, Nobel or whatever. So it was fun, but at that time, we've also thought about it like, okay, we are doing all the hard stuff, means like we are doing coding, we are doing the coding stuff, we are building the software, we are doing the things, and other people are using it and they are getting all the recognitions and whatever. So we need something where these people also will get their fair price. I mean, a fair contribution recognition. That's what we are thinking. And suddenly I got an invitation from Michelle in the APAN 53, like they are thinking about research software engineering community. So after that, I came back in Bangladesh and I did my, I'm doing research since then with my university and other research organizations. But again, what I'm feeling in Bangladesh, like we are not, we are also on the same side. Say whenever some people, they got some problems, say for example, some people mean some researchers, they are probably from economics or probably from sociology. So whenever they are having some problem in their computation, they come to us and they said, Kazi, can you solve it? And we solved it, but we are not getting our recognition from there. So that's from that point of view, this is very timely and very important talk, I should say. And I certainly am enlightened to the presentations of Michelle, Kaur, and Batul. So thanks all of you. I didn't know about the research software engineering community. So this is the first time that I'm listening. So it's a, it's an eye opener for me. So thank you very much. So before entering into the presentation, this is Kazi, Kazi Muhammad Sakib, especially I'm known to Kazi and Sakib, Kazi Sakib. I'm currently a professor at the IIT in Bangladesh, University of Dhaka. And I'm also the lead of a research group, Distributed Systems and Software Engineering. So that's my passion, software engineering, and distributed systems is my core while I did my, when I was doing my PhD. And you can find my, details about myself in the link below. So as I said, I will cover what is happening in Bangladesh and what should be the strategy to promote the RSA community in this region. Yes. I mean, it's all about stats, research stats in Bangladesh. Bangladesh currently, recently, say for example, last 5 or 10 years, we are planning to become a knowledge-based economy. So rather than say heavy industry and industry-based economy, that's why our government particularly focused on higher education. And you can see that all the universities, they are basically clustered with the purpose, with the focus group. So if you look at our private universities, they are sorted in 5 clusters: agricultural universities, science and technology universities, engineering universities, medical universities, general studies universities. So if you look at that, among the universities, 53 are public universities. That means they are funded by the government, and 92 is private universities. They are also conducting research. And among the 92 private universities, general private universities is 78, private science and technology universities 10, private engineering and technology universities 4. So, but not all the universities, they are particularly giving PhDs. So, but to some extent, they do some research, especially in the 4th year, and with the projects with the government and private partnerships. But specifically, 15 general universities and 14 science and technology universities focusing on STEM, they are giving PhDs. 5 engineering universities, their focus is on engineering specialization. 1 international university with focus on engineering and technology, and 6 agriculture universities, and 5 specialized universities. They are giving PhDs. Through PhDs, they are creating new knowledges, but other than that, all the faculty members, they are also involved with the projects, say government projects and various projects they are solving. So I'm just putting this slide on just to show you how diversified our research, our research is. Say here, total number of department means like you can relate it with the program. So if you find the programs, that is, you can find 892 unique programs. That means, say for example, in Dhaka University, you may find economics department. But if you go to, say, Rajshahi, say, some northern part of Bangladesh, you will also find the economics. But these 2 departments, they are teaching methodology and they are doing of research, and their specialization all are different. That's why I put it as unique programs or departments. So 892 unique departments here in Bangladesh, and total number of institutes is 70. So it's more or less 1,000 unique programs there. So all those programs, I'm telling you, all those programs, they are involved with the research. And say, for example, their faculty members and students, they all are doing some kind of research. So if I look at the graduate students per year, so you can see around 3,000 graduate students, and it is only in the government universities that the data is showing. So 3,000 graduate students are conducting research. Around 90 of research organizations and research centers are actively participating in this kind of research. So a lot of research is happening in this country. So obviously, we are not that much matured, like Batul said, in Saudi Arabia, but we are doing this. That's what I'm making my point. So if I look at some renowned research centers and groups, so by looking at their names, you can find like what diverse research that we are doing in Bangladesh. Say, for example, Center for Bioinformatics Learning, Advancement and Systems Training, CBLAST, Center for Advanced Research in Science, basically basic sciences, Distributed Systems and Software Engineering, this is my group, Center for Project Management and Information Systems, Research Center for Mathematical and Physical Sciences, Biomedical Research Center, Biotechnology Research Center, Bose Center for Advanced Study and Research in Natural Sciences, Center for Climate Change Study and Resource Utilization, Chromosome Research Center, Center for Environmental Science and Engineering Research, Center for Industrial Problems Research, SAST Research Center, Bangladesh Australia Center for Environmental Research. Other than that, you will find lots of research centers for, say, for example, economics, for politics, for international relationship, business, everything. So, well, basically, this is my group, and particularly our focus is only on software engineering, and we are kind of finding that research software engineering could be one of our domain. Like we can add it to our domain because software engineering, the basics of software engineering is always same, whether it is research software engineering or a professional software engineering. That's why we thought, like, okay, we could put a footstep here. Current practices in Bangladesh, you can find same person doing both the research and the computational work. So if you go to any research organization, especially in student or maybe non-student things, you will find the person who is doing the research, he or she is also doing the computational work as well. Say, for example, he or she did some say training on programming or other software things, and then they are doing the stuff. Even say, for example, the software engineers that we are producing in our institute and in software engineering departments, we are trying to follow the software engineering practices throughout the research, but it is simply not enough because our goal is not there. Our primary goal is doing research, so not to make the software good, rather than doing the research good. Researchers, other than those of CSIT fields, hire programmers. In some cases, they hire programmers for implementation or development and computational work. However, they do not follow the software engineering practices. Sometimes, I will show in the next slide, if you do not follow the software engineering practices, what will happen? Sometimes they just implement without the in-depth knowledge about the research and about the software development as well. So if you ask me what is the current practice in Bangladesh, I would say we don't have any concept of research software engineering. If we do any software engineering in the research, we do it individually, not as a community, not as a what it called, as a professional or professionals or whatever. I mean, we are doing just not as an institution. We are just doing it as personal level. So now come to the point. Since I'm a passionate software engineer, I'm doing my research on software engineering last 10 to 12 years, and I did start software engineering degree in this country. So from that point of view, I have identified some of the things that is are notable problems in this current practice. The consequences: unsustainable and non-reusable software. Just think about it. You have developed a software which is basically for once off, and that's basically a loss. And it is non-reusable because whatever you are developing for a particular project, it is focused on that particular project only. You are not focusing to reuse it in further projects or say subsequent projects. So this is a problem. Basically, we are developing unsustainable research software. But again, if you look at our researches, our citations, and other stuff, you will find those are really very impactful. So my point is, if we could follow our say sustainable research software, or we practice the research software engineering, the impact could have been more. So apart from sustainability, the reusability aspect is also important. Our developed research software is poor. Sometimes we need to build similar tools again from scratch, and this costs a lot of time in our research. If we could introduce RSE in this country, what could have been done? Research software engineers can solve all these problems stated previously, as they would properly follow software engineering principles to develop reusable and sustainable tools. Further research can be done in a domain with the same RSEs, as they have full knowledge of the research topic and domain. So just think about it, the efficiency could have been multiplied. Promoting RSE community in Bangladesh. BDREN is a huge thing here. I mean, in Bangladesh, just if you look at the BDREN, you could find all the universities, almost all the universities, they are connected through BDREN. All the research organizations, they are already connected through BDREN, or they are applying to be connected with the BDREN. So BDREN could take the initiative to create the bridge between these communities, and BDREN has a good connection with the APAN as well. I mean, with the Asia Pacific regions as well. So they can take that initiatives as well. So we can be part of that. We can organize workshops and seminars among researchers and research groups to convey the importance of RSE. I mean, if we could show them, like, if we have a RSE, if you have that concept of RSE, if we could recruit some professionals in view of RSE, what are the benefits and how you can multiply your efficiency. Collaborating with the established RSE community. As I said in this presentation, I mean, in this discussion forum, I become to learn about some RSE communities. So we can collaborate. We should not forget our purpose. As I said, I'm a software engineer, or maybe a software engineering researcher. A world which relies on software must recognize the people who develop it. As my supervisor said to the BBC professors, like, we will do all the programming stuff and you will get the Nobel Prize. So that shouldn't be. I mean, the recognition should be there. The mission of the community is to establish a research environment that recognizes the vital role of software in research. The idea of research software engineering, yes, indeed, in Bangladesh, yet to be evolved. Yes, we don't have any RSE community to the best of my knowledge. We don't have any RSE community now. However, we understand the importance of research software engineering and need to take measures to form and promote the RSE community in Bangladesh. So thank you for listening to me. Well, I don't know how important these slides to you, but your presentations is very important to me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kazi. And that is indeed, yes, an excellent example of some of the issues that are faced internationally by communities in increasing sustainability of what we do, of enabling reuse and enabling recognition of the people who develop it. I love your story about doing all the hard work and then getting none of the recognition. And that's exactly why the research software engineering movement started 10 years ago. But that's not to say that all these problems are solved. There's work going across the research software engineering community to look at ways to improve, to address all of these challenges. And there is certainly some fantastic work being done, but there aren't easy solutions for most of these issues, and they're still all works in progress. But it'd be fantastic to have even more representation from the many countries in Asia in all of these discussions. Let me open the floor if there's any questions or comments. Just trying to paste a few links in the chat there of a couple of upcoming events if people are interested as well.
Can we start our discussion? As I mentioned before, after Batu's presentation, nice presentation, I should say. So, how can we make said RAC as a profession? Say, for example, as a software engineer, my students are coming out from undergrads and other stuff, and how they could take this field as their profession. Is there any way? So I can give another example, like one of my friends, he also did his undergrad from MIT, Abdullah Al-Amin. So he started his career with a research organization, and he was doing there as a Java programmer. You know what? All the researchers, they are basically developing the models and other stuff, and they throw it to him like, okay, Abdullah, can you develop, do it for us in the computer? But the thing is, after doing 4 years of job there, he thought like, okay, this should not be a profession, because after a few years, he felt like, okay, he couldn't grow with this organization. That's why he moved to some other industry. Okay, so that's what also we need to think, Michelle. You are talking about the community. So when we will move with the community, we need to talk about the people who are working in this field. We need to show them like, yes, you can come here and live your life here. Isn't it?
Yeah, and so I think internationally, the research software engineering movement has gone through a number of different stages in different countries. And it usually starts with raising awareness of the idea of who is a research software engineer. So every year or two, they run an international survey. They've just closed the one for 2022, where people from any country can answer a whole lot of questions. Who identifies the research software engineer can answer a whole lot of questions. And that gives data to say, 2,000 people in this country identify as a research software engineer. And they spend all their time or part of their time developing research software, and they have said that only 10% of them have formal training and 90% have, no involvement with their peers to kind of learn from best practice. I'm exaggerating here, but it's not so far from the truth. So to produce some kind of data to take the decision makers and say, these people exist, they have these problems. In the survey, they've said they don't feel that they have a career path, 50% of them are on short-term contracts, those kinds of things. And then I think what's often happened in a country is, one organization has taken some kind of a lead. And it's fantastic when a national RSE association forms to help raise the profile across all of the country. But usually one organization is, some early adopters or a few organizations who really then take the plunge and look internally how they can start to recognize some of those people and make some small differences. They share those practices, then they make a few more changes in their practices. A few other organizations make some small, and then gradually you have momentum and bigger changes, and more organizations come on board. Saranjit and Batul, did you want to add to some of that?
I would like to add that in academia there would be a lot of inertia for introducing the RSC profession, but what one can do is try to push their supervisors or whoever is the senior person who is writing funds for them to write a fund which is using the title research software engineer or something around that. So that is one way in which the person who wants to work in this field can build a path for himself or herself. So this is what I learned from some of the RSCs in South Africa, where they have pitched it to their supervisors that please write a funding that uses the term RSC. Also, if someone is doing a postdoc, they can also try to pitch themselves as a research software engineers who are doing postdoc. So these are some of the ideas that I got to know, if that helps in some way.
Yeah, it can certainly be a slow process, as is any cultural change at the beginning, but it starts with some early adopters. And the fantastic news is the UK have been doing this for 10 years and quite far down the path. Then the US are probably the next experience. Germany, the Netherlands, some of the Nordic countries are probably in the next group who are some way down the path. And then there's some smaller groups in, for example, Australia, New Zealand, RSC Asia. There's groups thinking about forming in Argentina and Canada and South Africa. So the movement keeps growing. So there's lots of experiences you can learn from internationally about how others have gone down the path. And if you look at the Society of RSC web pages, they were probably linked to there's many different blogs or published papers that give some advice on this evolution, or talk, of course, to Saranjit about how RSC Asia Association is hoping to build this across Asia, and how Bangladesh could really tie into that. I really would love to hear from some of our participants as to what they're interested in research software engineering. What brought them to this event? Is it that you have a role in research software as Kazi does and are looking for a whole lot of solutions? Or perhaps you work more broadly in open science or open research data and are wondering about what the research software piece. If anyone's happy to unmute or type something into the chat or onto the WOVA page, we'd really love to hear a bit about the audience and what are your interests or your challenges, so we could understand a bit more of what else is happening in the community. It might be to simply talk about what's happening in your organization or your team with regards to research software. So if anyone would like to share any of that, we'd love to hear it. Please don't be shy. It's really just an opportunity to start to build a bit more of a community, as Kazi emphasized early on, to understand where there may be touch points of someone with this interest or working in this kind of team or this kind of research, so that we can expand our own networks.
Michelle, can you hear me?
Yes, Mohammed. Yes, please go ahead.
I threw you a question and you answered it. Actually, I am not a software engineer. I am the CEO of Biriren. So here the topic of Biriren came through Professor Saqib. I will try my level best to play my role if there is any. But I was a little bit confused with research software engineering as a profession and open science. So you answered my question in chat box, but to my concept, correct me if I am wrong, the research software engineer, what they will produce, that will be open source software, or that is proprietary only for particular researchers?
Yeah, it can be either. Increasingly, obviously, the open science movement is encouraging open software as one of its pillars, along with open hardware and open data. But there are certainly scenarios in which software is still better off closed. So it doesn't have to be the case that a research software engineer is working on open software. Anyone else wanted to add more to explain that?
So in that case, what Professor Saqib is saying, then how the profession will be recognized? Only through acknowledgement, soft acknowledgement, or acknowledgement in the research paper, that's all? Or how then it can be developed as a profession?
There's a range of different things happening in different countries. So Force 11 is an organization, an international organization that have really been looking at how to enable software citation. So if you Google the Force 11, F-O-R-C-E, number 11, software citation principles, then they've been working with the research communities, with publishers and funders to try and get processes in place. So for example, if you're publishing a paper on Zenodo or with a particular publisher, that software citation becomes the norm. We're now quite used to being asked to upload our data file when we publish a paper. And now more and more of those infrastructures are also saying, do you have software that you want to not upload, but provide links to, provide a DOI, digital object identifier to, so that readers of your paper can access the software that you've used from a reproducibility viewpoint. We're all increasingly used to providing the data that we use, so someone else could use that data to reproduce our results, but we also would need to provide access to the software, which is far more complex than providing access to the data. So there's those kinds of things happening. There are organizations who are experimenting with different roles. I pasted in the chat a link to a paper about what different layers of an RSE career path might look like. And so there are organizations that now have 3 to 5 different roles in their university called research software engineer, senior research software engineer, research software engineer with a particular specialization like bioinformatics. And there are organizations all around the world that have those in place. And some of them have, so in academia, we usually have kind of an administrative career path and a researcher career path that leads to professor. And what we've seen for a long time is the research software doesn't kind of fit anywhere well in there. So some organizations are saying, is there a third space, sometimes it's called, for these kind of professionals? And the same kind of conversations are happening around data students to support research data management in open science. And some other organizations are looking at, well, can we make research software engineers part of the professional career path? Can you become a professor of research software engineering? And we're starting to see those kind of roles exist, or there's professors of open science that exist now in the world. So there's a range of different ways. I hope that gives some examples, and if others would like to contribute more, then please do so.
Do you want me to add something with you, Michelle?
Yeah, welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, one thing. Number one, what Mohammad Tawreed was saying, first of all, the software, whether it will be open source or not. I mean, it could be based on the research project that we are writing, because in this project, if it says like, okay, it will be a public property, then it's fine. But in some cases, the projects that we are writing, in some of the cases, they said like everything is proprietary based, or maybe intellectual property is preserved. So in that case, it will be very difficult to write a software for all. But most of the cases, the research is open, the open science and open software as well. So we can do that kind of stuff. And in the second part, just think about it. I mean, I met one guy a couple of months ago. I mean, he was basically data scientist, means like a computational data scientist. I mean, he knows how to do the analytical job, like running the data with the code and produce some graphs and blah, blah, blah. what he was saying, I mean, he was working there for 4 years now, and what he was saying, like, he knows better, I mean, about the data and about like for which kind of data, what kind of analysis is appropriate. He knows better even than his professor, you know, although he's kind of research software engineer. Yeah, I mean, that's what his job is, like writing codes to analyze the data, collected data. So just think about it. If this guy is recognized as, say, for example, as a researcher, or maybe as a, I don't know, research software engineer, as a research software engineer, that would have been better. I mean, he could contribute more, even when he will move from this organization to another organization. He could apply for a research post as well, isn't it? So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, thank you.
Research software engineer, I believe he is only the coder, right? Is he a researcher?
Well, if you work in a research organization and if you are a qualified researcher, say, for example, one of my friends, that what I was giving the example about Abdullah. Abdullah, basically a computer scientist, but when he was working in a bioinformatics society, okay, so in the bioinformatics society means like bioinformatics it's a blend of informatics and biology. So he became an expert as well about bioinformatics. So what's wrong? But since he didn't have any paper or anything, that's why he couldn't get a job in the research organization. That's why he moved back to the software industry again.
One way of thinking about it is that software encodes knowledge.
Yeah.
So the person who's done the software programming has contributed to the development of that knowledge. So modeling is a useful, a very strong example of that, where if you've designed the modeling for COVID-19, then you've probably done the research software development as well. We don't really have epidemiologists thinking about how you'd analyze, transmission, and then asking a research software engineer to do it without them having, because so much knowledge of the topic is needed by the research software engineer. So those two roles have merged. The research software epidemiologist also knows how to code, or the person who used to be the research software engineer has now learned so much about epidemiology, the research aspect, that it's the same person. So to say, are they the researcher or are they the software developer, kind of becomes meaningless in that kind of conversation.
I'm just supplementing with one example. Like I was involved with the requirements engineering task. I mean, some of the one of the companies in Bangladesh, they were doing some banking software, core banking software. So during that requirements engineering phase, their engineers, they worked in that bank for 2 years. And you know what? After developing that software, those guys who were worked there, they were considered known about banking system better than person who basically did banking degrees or other business degrees. Yeah, and that's the fact.
That's a great example. And we can also think about it in terms of the fact that in most first year science degrees now, coding may be part of the curriculum. I speak that my son is in first year uni and has to do a bit of Python here in Australia. And I'm delighted at that it's just considered a useful skill to be able to do at least a little bit of coding, in the same way as doing a little bit of statistical analysis, or hopefully, understanding a bit about the ethical environment in which research takes place. That all of these things are now equally important. Okay, I'll just paste a couple more questions in the chat if this is useful to stimulate conversation. So it might be useful to think if there are things that you, your team, your organization, your initiative are struggling with, where you'd really like to collaborate or learn from others' best practices in the same way that we've helped perhaps some organizations today learn about this concept and pointed towards some resources. If there's other things that your organization struggles with in relation to research software, be it recognition or how to encourage reuse, or how to identify staff, or how to upskill people, or how to produce sustainable software, it would be great to talk through a little bit of those and connect you to some of the broader international work, or perhaps even other initiatives in your region that are looking at some of these issues. Kenji, did you unmute because you'd like to speak? Maybe not. Anyone's welcome to take the floor if they're interested. If not, then we're probably wrapping up the session then. I'm very grateful for everyone who's joined today. It's fantastic to have this degree of interest, and I do encourage you to go and look at the work of the RSE Association and join up as a member. It will be very helpful to really keep growing that momentum to show the interest in this community. Thank you very much to my fellow speakers. It's very welcome to have your wisdom on the panel here today. And thank you very much for APAN for providing this opportunity for us to all come together and share our joint wisdom and learn from others in the room. So we hope that that was useful. I hope you're enjoying APAN, and we'll see you all in some of the other sessions for the few remaining hours of APAN. Thanks, everyone. Bye.